Hi, everyone, and welcome to OA Week 2025. We will be getting started in just a moment. We'll take a few minutes to allow more people to arrive. Okay, and welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining us for OA Week 2025 in this PI-TOA session. My name is Carly LaRoche and I'm a member of the GOA-ON Secretariat. Please note that this session is being recorded and you'll be able to view it later on YouTube as well. OA Week is presented by 4 sponsoring organizations. First, GOA-ON, the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network. Second, NOAA, the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Third, the IAEA OAICC, the International Atomic Energy Agency Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center. And last but not least, the IOC, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. GOA-ON was established in 2012 with just a handful of members to start out with. Since then, GOA-ON has grown immensely to over 1,200 members now from over 110 countries. GOA-ON also consists of 11 regional hubs, which span across continents and oceanographic regions. We'll be hearing from most of them throughout OA Week, including this session that you're in currently. If you're not already a GOA-ON member, you can join GOA-ON today by visiting goaon.org. I'll drop a link in the chat in a little bit so that you all have the membership information. OA Week debuted in 2020 and returned in 2021 when events and conferences were postponed due to COVID-19. Following the successful in-person symposium on the ocean in a high CO2 world in 2022, OA Week has become an annual event to maintain momentum around OA research and to provide a virtual platform for ocean acidification community to exchange their latest findings. We are thrilled to present a wide range of ocean acidification topics and speakers from around the world during this OA Week. A few words on housekeeping before we get started. During the presentations, all participants are in listen-only mode. You are welcome to type any questions into the questions box, which can be found at the bottom of the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll be monitoring for incoming questions and we'll pose them to our speakers during the question and answer period at the end of the final presentation. For the discussion, you can also use the raise hand function in the toolbox at the bottom of your screen, and that way we can call on you and allow you to ask your question directly. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to your moderator for this session, Maisy Lus. Maisy is a Master's Applied Marine Science student at the University of Plymouth, whose work focuses on blue carbon ecosystems, ocean acidification, and nature-based coastal protection. As a founder of the Coastline Care Project and executive director of Fish Reef Project PNG, she leads community-driven marine conservation and champions international collaboration to protect ocean health. She's also one of our wonderful OA Week coordinators this year and has done an amazing amount of work to help make this week possible. So thank you, Maisy. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Carly, for that introduction, and a warm welcome to everyone joining us from across the Pacific and around the world. This is the Pacific Islands and Territories Ocean Acidification session, and it's part of the broader effort to strengthen collaboration, capacity, and research on ocean acidification across our region. The Pacific Islands and Territories OA Network brings together scientists, policymakers, and community partners who are working to better understand how ocean acidification is affecting our islands and to develop practical solutions that support both ecosystems and communities. Ocean acidification remains one of the most pressing challenges facing marine environments, particularly for Pacific Island nations, where livelihoods, food security, and cultural heritage are deeply tied to healthy oceans. In today's session, we are joined by an inspiring panel of speakers whose work spans the Pacific. Our panel highlights efforts to advance ocean acidification science, strengthen monitoring networks, foster community partnerships, and share lessons from recent regional research and dialogues. With that, I'd like to warmly welcome our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Sebastiaan van der Velde. He is a marine biogeochemist at the University of Otago, where he leads the Earth Sciences New Zealand carbonate chemistry facilities. He manages the Moderator time series and the New Zealand Ocean Acidification Observing Network, with research spanning marine carbonate chemistry, sedimentary biogeochemistry, and coastal carbon cycling. With that, thank you so much, Sebastiaan, for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you for that introduction. Let's see, get the screen sharing going. There you go. I hope everyone can see the screen. And not everyone can hear me. I assume that's all right.
Yes.
All right. Well, no, thank you for the introduction. So, as said, yeah, I'm based in New Zealand, down here in Aotearoa, Dunedin, in the University of Otago, where I'm managing the Earth Sciences New Zealand carbonate facilities and the monitoring, which is linked into the ocean acidification monitoring. And so what I want to talk about today is a little bit about how the MUNIDA monitoring that has been going on is actually showing us signals or responses of the ocean to the changing carbonate chemistry that we would have not initially anticipated. And so the data that I'll be showing will be coming from the MUNIDA time series. So just to orientate ourselves, so we have New Zealand on the there you go. So you got New Zealand on the left, and so Dunedin-Aotearoa is located on the South Island, on the east coast. And so the MUNIDA time series has been going on for the last 25 years. And so it's a transect that starts in the shelf waters and that goes all the way over to the subantarctic waters. So as we're going out, we're crossing three distinct water masses. So as I said, we're starting in shelf or near shore waters. Somewhere after the first third of the transect, we're crossing into the subtropical waters, which are coming from around the Tasman, come around the South Island, and then we end up in the subantarctic waters. And so this transect, all this data that I'll be presenting is actually collected by Kim Curry, who was leading this lab and the transect before me. So actually none of the data, I haven't collected a single data point of what I'm showing. So all the credit goes to Kim. And so what we're doing, or what has been done on this transect, is we have 9 stations that are spread out evenly going from the shelf to the subantarctic. And along those 9 stations, we are collecting, we have one CTD station, which is all the way out at the subantarctic station where we do drop a CTD, and we also take a depth transect. And along every of those 9 stations, we're continuously collecting PCO2 measurements, but also discrete samples for alkalinity, dissolved inorganic carbon, nutrients, and chlorophyll A. And so what I'll mostly be focusing on is actually a comparison between these surface samples that we have been collecting from the shelf waters and how they compare to what we're seeing in the subantarctic waters. And so the first thing that we notice is, as you would expect with increasing CO2 in the atmosphere, is that the saturation state of calcite or aragonite, just the carbonate saturation state, is decreasing. And this is both decreasing in the subantarctic and the shelf station. So that's not too surprising. You do see there's a bit more variability on the shelf station, which is, again, if you're looking at coastal waters, there's a lot of more dynamics coming from discharge from the river, which is changing very rapidly. So there might be a bit of a noise coming through this riverine signal. There's also much more interaction with anthropogenic activities. There's a lot of dredging happening in the harbor. There's a lot more happening in the shelf, which might lead to a bit more noise. But overall, our signal is quite clear. There's a strong decrease in saturation state. What happens when we look at the alkalinity? And so this is deseasonalized. So if we've removed that potential seasonal signal, is actually that in the subantarctic station, there's no change. So the alkalinity in the surface waters of the subantarctic stays virtually constant. The slope is even 0, so it's very constant. But when we look at the shelf waters, there seems to be an increase in alkalinity concentration in these waters over time. And so when we notice that, the obvious question is why? Why are we seeing a change in alkalinity in these shelf waters while we're not seeing the same in the subantarctic waters? And so going through a few reasons as to why we can see this increase. One of the first things is that these coastal waters, they are adjacent to subtropical waters. There is quite a strong coastal current, but there's still quite a bit of entrainment of this modified subtropical water into these shelf waters. And so there is evidence that this current has been changing, so there might also be a change in how much of this water is entrained. And so as these subtropical waters are higher in salinity, they're also higher in alkalinity. So maybe there's a bit more dilution of these shelf waters with the subtropical waters. But then what we did, we normalized the alkalinity to the salinity, which would cancel out this potential increase in entrainment of these higher alkalinity, higher salinity waters. But that still shows a positive trend. It dropped a little bit, so the increase isn't as strong, but it's still overall a positive trend. So it seems to be that that's not the only explanation. Another option could be, since we're in the coastal zone, is that the rivers are delivering more alkalinity, that there's more weathering on land because of the higher CO2, more rainfall. This has been observed in other places in the world, for example, in the Mississippi. So that could be the reason. But then I don't know if some of you have seen the beautiful hinterland of Otago. Those nice rocks that are there, they're greywacke, which is, in terms of weathering, probably one of the most boring rocks in the world. They don't weather a lot, and if they do weather, they're not releasing a lot of alkalinity. So actually most of the rivers in Otago draining into the coastal zone are very low in alkalinity. And they're also not really, there's also no evidence for any change in discharge or change in alkalinity concentration. So this riverine input is probably not the most plausible cause. So then we started thinking, maybe there's a change in the internal alkalinity cycle. Maybe the balance between alkalinity production and consumption within the coastal zone has been changing. And so to explain how this would work, we maybe need to take a little step back and think a bit about the global alkalinity cycle, or what's modulating alkalinity in the global ocean. And so the first thing, well, alkalinity, most of the alkalinity comes through weathering of land. Rocks erode, release alkalinity that comes into the ocean and leaves the alkalinity. There's a contribution of seafloor processes of weathering in the seafloor. And so these two would make would be the biggest alkalinity source to the ocean. But within the ocean, there's also calcification. So calcifiers consume alkalinity, they form this calcium carbonate, and this calcium carbonate sinks down. So that's removing that alkalinity again. If this would this is not necessarily in balance, so not all this calcium carbonate eventually gets buried. So we get calcium carbonate production that sinks down. As it sinks down, part of it will be dissolved, and so we have this strong internal cycling of calcium carbonate, which is essentially removing alkalinity from the surface ocean, and when it sinks down, it'll dissolve will dissolve and restore this alkalinity. So the balance between alkalinity, between calcium carbonate production and dissolution is what is governing the internal alkalinity balance of the whole ocean. This is what's this also operates on longer timescales. So if you think about the on 10, 100,000 year timescales, if we have calcium carbonate production in the surface ocean, that will sink down. In the surface ocean, it's super saturated, that'll settle down, and as we settle, the solubility changes, so we get a change, higher temperature, higher pressures, lower temperatures, so our saturation of calcium carbonate shifts until it goes below the saturation horizon, and there it starts dissolving. And this is then the feedback that regulates climate. So if this is in balance, calcium carbonate is produced below the saturation horizon in the ocean, calcium carbonate is dissolved. But as the CO2 changes, so the higher CO2, more acidification, the saturation horizon will move upwards. So there will be more calcium carbonate that dissolves. So the balance changes, there will be less calcium carbonate produced, more will dissolve, and so we have an increase in alkalinity. As CO2 drops down, the saturation horizon would drop down again, and so you would have more calcium carbonate production than you would have dissolution, and so you would start to be removing alkalinity from the ocean. This is how it operates on the global scale, or in the ocean and in the deep ocean, but it's not only the deep ocean where calcium carbonate dissolves. Even though these surface waters are oversaturated with calcium carbonate, in the sediment and within small micro-niches of marine snow, there is calcium carbonate dissolution happening. But this calcium carbonate dissolution is driven by what we would call metabolic carbonate dissolution. So as our organic matter is being mineralized, CO2 is being produced, CO2 being an acid, so we're in this microenvironment, be it a sediment or be it a marine snow, we're building up CO2, we're building up acid, we're dropping that saturation state, and calcium carbonate starts dissolving. So this is what we call metabolic carbonate dissolution. The interesting thing, and this is something that's not as much recognized as much, is that metabolic carbonate dissolution also depends on how much carbonate is dissolved through metabolic carbonate dissolution, also has a dependency to the saturation state. So if you look at, these are experiments from Abby Lundström in University of Southern California, where they were flowing water through a sediment column, and they were quantifying how much calcium carbonate was being dissolved. And so as you see, as you decrease the saturation state of the inflowing water, you have an increase in how much calcium carbonate is being dissolved. And so the reason for that is metabolic carbonate dissolution. It is the production of acid that dissolves the calcium carbonate. But the first step that you need is you need to produce enough acid to reach a saturation state of below 1, and then you start dissolving your calcium carbonate. If you start with water which has a lower saturation state, you need to produce less acid before you start dissolving calcium carbonate. So you have more potential to dissolve calcium carbonate. An interesting thing is, and I couldn't find a better picture for this, but if you look at the sediment in the shelf of the East Otago area, that sediment is very sandy. And so it's an ideal location for metabolic carbonate dissolution because it's sandy. There's a lot of water flowing through. The water flows through the sand, so there's a lot of oxygen to stimulate aerobic respiration, and this aerobic respiration will then fuel calcium carbonate dissolution. So the idea was that maybe the decrease in saturation state because of the increase in atmospheric CO2 is actually stimulating calcium carbonate dissolution in the sediment, which would then change our internal balance of our internal alkalinity cycle and lead to an increase in alkalinity in the surface ocean. So to test that, what we did was, we first built a sediment model for a sandy seafloor, which would be the East Otago Shelf. And then we validated. So these experiments of Abby Lundström, we've just simulated the same experiments and compared model to the data they got. And we got a fairly good agreement between between our model on the one hand and their data on the other hand. So then we took that sediment model for calcium carbonate dissolution, and we plugged it into just a box model of the whole East Otago shelf. So we selected the area of the East Otago shelf, and we made a model that accounted for the atmosphere, the ocean, or the shelf waters, and then the seafloor. And so we had alkalinity coming in through the rivers. We had alkalinity exchanging across with the subtropical front. And then we had calcium carbonate production internally, so calcification, and then settling down of that calcium carbonate to the sediment, and there it would dissolve. And everything that's not dissolved would eventually be removed by a burial. There's not that much data available for that region, even though it's one of the more studied regions of New Zealand. So to cover for these uncertainties, we used what they call a Monte Carlo approach, which is that we just randomly selected between all the possible parameter combinations. We randomly selected 10,000, and then we ran the model and compared what we found, compared the output to the available data. And so only the parameter sets that fitted within the available constraints were used, and then we used to do the further simulation. So there's about 90 parameter sets that remained after this filtering. And then what we did is we ran it forward. So we had our model for 1998, the beginning of the Minera time series, and then we ran our model forward, only forcing it with the observed PCO2 of the atmosphere. And so what you see is, if you compare the simulated trends versus the data trends, so there's quite some uncertainty on the data trend. As I said in the beginning, there's quite some noise in the shelf waters, but there's an overall positive trend. And if you look at the different model simulations, so the blue one is where we only accounted for calcification. Calcification also being dependent on the saturation state, so lower saturation, less calcification. And then the full model where we also included the sediment part that was responding to changes in the saturation state. And so our dynamic sedimentary dissolution, so our red line, fits better with the observed data. It's still not perfect, so we still can't fully explain the whole increase, and this could have to do with changes in productivity. That's also been seen in New Zealand waters, is that there's an increase in chlorophyll A over the last 20, 30 years. So there might have been an increase in productivity. More productivity would lead to more organic matter, which also would help stimulate metabolic calcium carbonate dissolution. So this could be an extra factor that could account for this increase in alkalinity. But nevertheless, it's clear that our model simulation supports the idea that there's been a change in the internal alkalinity cycle on the Otago shelf. So then we asked the question whether this would be a single New Zealand or Otago phenomenon, or whether there's also evidence for other places across the globe where this could be the case. So we did a bit of a literature study to other time series where they had collected the alkalinity data for shelf waters over a long enough time. There weren't that many, but there were a few. And so the interesting thing is that we saw, except for the top left, which is the North Pacific, which is actually a site near Saanich, the Salish Sea, which is actually more fine grains, not sandy. Also not that much data points available, but there we didn't find a positive trend. But all the other spots near Brest in France and in the Mediterranean, they all suggest there's been an increase in alkalinity over the last 10 to 20 years. And so it seems to indicate that this is a global phenomenon, so that there is potentially a shift in this internal alkalinity cycle driven by increasing atmospheric CO2 and accordingly decreasing saturation states. So if this is happening globally, the next question was, of course, how important is this globally? So we took this feedback of calcium carbonate dissolution in the sediment linked to change in the saturation state, and we put it into an Earth system model of intermediate complexity, just to get an idea about how important this would be on a global scale. And so we forced it with the observed and forecasted PCO2 of the atmosphere for different climate change scenarios. And so what we see is that, well, there seems to be a global effect. The model itself suggests that actually this enhanced CO2 uptake because of increased PCO2 seems to be already happening in the early 1800s. Whether that's true, I cannot tell, but it seems to be suggesting it at least. But also by today, it's about 30 teragrams of carbon per year that's been taken up extra by the ocean because of this increased calcium carbonate dissolution. And depending on the climate change scenario, this can double by the year 2100. So it's not petagrams of carbon, but it's a significant extra CO2 uptake in the ocean. And maybe important to note is that this feedback of seafloor's calcium carbonate dissolution is not included in any of the global models right now. So this is also something which has not really been accounted for in any forecast or carbon budget, at least modeled carbon budget. So what can we conclude, or what are the conclusions of the study? So first of all, I think I like to say that time series are extremely valuable because there are responses that we see in these time series that not necessarily we would have necessarily predicted or suggested without actually having seen that there's a response in the environment. And so I would probably say that adding seafloor observatories, where we're actually looking at what's happening in the seafloor over a longer period of time, could provide extra information. So that's something that I'm trying to add on here on the Munedice, to have at least one shelf seafloor observatory. That the shelf seafloor is very dynamic, and it's actually quite important because of this shallower water column and the higher energy. There's a lot, the mixed layer depth actually reaches down to the seafloor on seasonal timescales, which means that everything that happens in the seafloor rapidly gets mixed upwards to the sea surface, and is just interacting with the atmosphere on timescales that are relevant to us. And that this changing chemistry in the shelf seafloor is actually a climate feedback, and it's relatively important, and it's also very rapid. It's responding very rapid. So with that, I guess I'll take any questions at the end. And I'll thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Sebastiaan, for your presentation and for giving us a fascinating insight into shelf seafloor dissolution and potential climate feedback. Again, to our audience, if you do have any questions, you can find the QA box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and please put in any questions that you have for any of our speakers throughout the session. Next, I'd like to introduce our second speaker. Our second speaker is Rachel Hale. Rachel Hale is a benthic ecologist with Earth Sciences New Zealand and NIWA. Her work investigates the biodiversity and functional ecology of seafloor environments and their responses to stresses such as ocean acidification. She is passionate about understanding how marine ecosystems support global processes and human well-being. With that, thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us today, and I'll let you proceed with your presentation.
Thanks, Maisy. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Rachel Hale, toko ingoa, he marine ecologist aho ki Taihoro Nukarangi, ke whakatua ho e noho ana. So hello, my name is Rachel Hale. I'm as Maisy said, with a great introduction, I'm a marine ecologist working at Earth Sciences Aotearoa, New Zealand. So Earth Sciences New Zealand is a new organisation that was formed very recently in July by merging a number of institutes that included the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research, which is who I worked for previously. So I'm presenting today on some preliminary results from a recent horizon scanning exercise that the Pacific Islands and Territories Ocean Acidification Network, PI-TOA, ran, that was designed to be the next step up from a needs assessment and identify the activities that the Pacific Island Ocean Acidification research community wants to get involved in and to determine what's required to achieve that. So if you're active in the Pacific Ocean Acidification community, then you'll know that this exercise was run pretty recently. So I'm just presenting some really early results today in the hope that we've got time to have a quick discussion around some of the prioritized activities, also that you can get in contact if you have any relevant information or you want to know more. So to run the horizon scan, we used a modified Delphi technique, meaning we had a call for questions and topics of importance. We composed our questionnaire and distributed it to the PI-TOA mailing list, and then focused the responses to the questionnaire into actions that the community could potentially engage with. And we had 26 actions that were identified, and these actions coalesced around the 10 themes on the right. And actions were presented back to the community for ranking for prioritization. And so we're now in the results discussion phase of the process and digesting all the detailed information that was provided by everyone who answered the questionnaire. So just to understand the Pacific Island Ocean Acidification research community that we had, we asked for some respondent demographics. So most of our researchers considered themselves early career, so within 10 years of their last degree, and they also considered themselves novice practitioners of ocean acidification science. But we did also have a range of competencies, including many who considered themselves proficient and expert. Our respondents were from 11 different countries, but as you can see, some of the countries only had one respondent to represent them. And given the number of islands and territories in the Pacific, there are many places that we didn't get any responses from at all, which I guess is not terribly surprising, but just something to note when we're thinking about future activities. So to get immediately to the results, these were the highest prioritized actions out of all 26. And these are the actions I'm going to focus the discussion on the next few slides on. So as with the recent Aotearoa New Zealand focused horizon scan, the highest ranked action was to engage with policymakers. And 3 out of the remaining top 5 actions are focused on collecting more data on ocean acidification effects, which will inform this policy engagement. The other high-ranking actions include to establish national monitoring programs in nations that don't have them already, to make sure that there are comprehensive country baselines for ocean acidification in those that do, and we've just heard from Seb about how important having longer-term time series and baseline information is. And then finally, to do more research into the effects of ocean acidification and other concurrent stresses. And researchers were also very interested in taking part in direct action, working to conserve or restore marine habitats. So first, to examine potential policy-related activities, we asked, is OA currently sufficiently integrated into policy in your country? And unsurprisingly, the majority answered no, with the majority also agreeing that there is a need to improve policymaker awareness of ocean acidification. I've just put some quotes from the questionnaire answers on the slide. All the text that's in italics on the following slides is quotes from the questionnaire answers. And researchers highlighted things like communicating ocean acidification data and research to policymakers to make them more aware, the fact that there's a lack of funds to make and implement ocean acidification action plans, and the need to partner with regional organizations to keep data collection going. So this leads into the identified monitoring actions, which would inform this dialogue with policymakers. So this map shows the resources available across different islands and territories in the Pacific. Questionnaire answers highlighted the need to build longer time series of measurements to enable visualization and communication of the changes occurring to the public and policymakers, but that more capacity building and equipment was needed to produce this. And there was this desire to expand data collection to other countries and territories in the region, which will require new equipment and making training available to more locations as well. And the aim of this monitoring is ultimately to allow countries to submit their data for the Sustainable Development Goals under Target 14.3. Specific SDG data submission question responses identified barriers to this as being a lack of trained personnel and funding to make this happen, alongside the need to ensure that the data that's being submitted is of good quality. But the initiatives like the Pacific Island Ocean Acidification Centre, who are supporting training and capacity sharing between countries, supporting data collection and enabling expansion of the GOA-ON in a Box programme to new locations, this initiative was a great help to researchers. So similarly to during the New Zealand exercise, Pacific researchers ranked undertaking more research into the effects of ocean acidification and related stresses highly. And a number of potential research topics that the community wanted to investigate were identified, including how ocean acidification is affecting fisheries and testing mitigation techniques, undertaking controlled exposure experiments, and looking at both individual physiological and reproductive effects, as well as higher level ecosystem changes. Direct actions, such as planting mangroves and restoring seagrass beds and coral reefs, weren't mentioned often in the questionnaire responses, but ranked very highly out of all the activities identified during the ranking exercise. And this is potentially because scientists engaging in these activities would not only directly help, which obviously makes us feel really good, but would draw attention to these ecosystems and their stresses to the public and policymakers. With respect to partnerships in the region, many researchers already had productive international and regional partnerships, and there were 13 key organisations or initiatives that were named by respondents as providing assistance in many forms across the region. So these include initiatives like GOA-ON, the Pacific Island Ocean Acidification Centre via SPC, PI-TOA, and then colleagues such as Seb from the University of Otago, the University of Hawaii, and other institutes. So with respect to managing the risks of OA, it wasn't known by most researchers whether there was the information and tools needed to assess the risk of OA to the environment and the economic sector. Sectors deemed most vulnerable were fisheries and local food and community well-being. A similar question designated these as being of the highest priority to include in national policy initiatives, and other actions identified by the horizon scanning exercise were to develop specific project support-based partnerships and economic sector-specific risk assessments. And these were to assist with managing and mitigating the effects of climate change on these sectors. And again, the need for data and information and the communication of it to policymakers and local communities was identified. So what are the next steps following this initial assessment? Well, for PI-TOA, we've got a lot more information than the snapshot I've just presented. So we're going to be continuing to digest this. But following that, we'll be working with our partners to turn activities into action. You may have also heard that the 6th International Ocean in a High CO2 World Symposium will be coming to Whanganui-a-Tara, Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we're going to talk about that next. So we hope to use that as another opportunity for the Pacific community to come together, compile the monitoring data that's been collected around the Pacific, and strategize on how we can achieve some of the actions identified in this exercise. And so finally, just to say thanks to everyone who took the time to respond to our questionnaire and undertook the ranking exercise. The inputs we received were very detailed and very much appreciated. And so please watch this space for more inputs, for more updates, and please get in contact with your thoughts and if you've got any further inputs. And if you're interested, you can also find more information on the methods that we used and the outcomes of the Aotearoa New Zealand-based Horizon Scan exercise in the article, and I've just put the link at the bottom of the slide there. So thank you for your time, and look forward to this discussion after the session.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that presentation and really the work you and the team are doing to put this together. It's very inspiring to see these forward-looking priorities for the, Pacific OA research. So thank you so much for that presentation. With that, we'd like to move on to our next speakers. So in the next session, we'll be hearing about the upcoming 6th Ocean in a High CO2 World Symposium from the local organizing committee. And for this part of the session, we'll be having 2 speakers, including Rachel, come out and speak. So I'll introduce the first speaker. He is Dr. Christopher Cornwall. Chris is a marine scientist whose work largely assesses how kelp forests and coral reef ecosystems function today and in the future. He is primarily interested in seaweed, especially coralline algae. However, he also works on corals, albuline, and sea urchins. His work uses ecology, physiology, statistics, modeling, and geochemistry to answer questions. Chris presently works at the Te Heranga Waka Victoria University of Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand. He has worked on the impacts of ocean acidification for almost 2 decades across the globe, with his present work focusing on Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the South Pacific. He is also currently the chief editor of Ocean Ecosystems. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today.
Thanks, Maisy. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Chris Cornwall, aho, ki te Heranga Waka, aho. Kia ora, everyone. My name's Dr. Christopher Cornwall, and I'm going to give a short presentation on the symposium, and we're going to pose a bit of a question at the end about our potential themes and discuss what our vision for the conference will be. So it will be held between the 12th and the 16th of October in sunny Aotearoa, New Zealand, and my hometown of Wellington. So hold on a second. So I'm just going to briefly go over who we are. I'm not going to dwell on each individual committee member, but we have a series of different committees. So we have the local organising committee, which is chaired by myself, co-chaired by Christina McGraw, and co-chaired by Rachel Hale, who you guys should all know from her presentation. And we have a number of other committee members who are based both in the Pacific, some of you that are attending today, Luia, and others that are based in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So the local committee will essentially be the feet on the ground, getting the work done to make sure this is a great conference. But we have a number of other committees that are supporting us to ensure that this is a really good conference. And so we have the local advisory committee, who are members who live in either New Zealand or Australia, who have got lots of experience in running these types of conferences from an academic point of view. So Katrina Hurd, who ran the 4th symposium in Hobart, and a range of other scientists, including Kim Curry here in New Zealand, who have got lots of experience in the ocean acidification community and also in running conferences. We have the International Advisory Committee from places all over the world, including the Pacific Islands, and that is chaired by Professor Sam Dupont. Christina McGraw and myself are also part of that committee to link in with the local organising committee. So their role will be to assist with what are the upcoming topics of interest that could be of relevance to the global ocean acidification and wider community. We have the ECR committee, so they are half New Zealand and the rest made up of international ECRs. So they will be organising things around making sure that this is a conference that is really committed to ECRs, and so events and mentoring that are around ECR-driven opportunities, making it an ECR-friendly place to come to. Why Wellington? Well, Aotearoa, New Zealand is a central hub to the Pacific and Australia. We have a strong ocean acidification community that started around 2005 or even earlier, when a range of scientists based at Otago University and elsewhere began working on the effects of ocean acidification. New Zealand itself has a strong maritime history. We have a large exclusive economic zone that makes climate change in the marine environment extremely important to this country. Local Māori have strong connection with the ocean, and we will ensure that their views are also put forward in this conference. So quite a few of our members are part of the local iwi, Taranaki, Whanganui Fisheries Trust, and will ensure that we have a really putting Indigenous viewpoints at the central focus of this symposium from the start. And our event centre, Tākina, is a really welcoming and inviting location. It can hold up to 1,500 attendees. We expect that we won't get that for this symposium, but we will have hopefully somewhere between 350 to 600 attendees. Why now? It's perfect timing since the last symposium in Peru. We really want to strengthen the OA field and make sure that its diversification is represented in this conference. We have a strong emergence of the multi-stressor field. So, for example, a lot of the core researchers from the ocean acidification community don't just work on ocean acidification alone, but are working on other stresses as well. And we have the field of ocean alkalinity enhancement particularly, and also other forms of MCDR that a lot of the ocean acidification scientists are diversifying into. On top of that, we have things like extreme events and hypoxia, which are also core to members in the ocean acidification community now. What are our goals? To reunite ocean acidification researchers across the globe. So ocean acidification will be central to this conference. We also want to strengthen ties between ocean acidification researchers and other disciplines. And we really want to integrate Indigenous viewpoints and researchers into this field. What has worked or not in the past? It'd be great to hear what your opinions are on this, but what we've been hearing is that the hybrid symposium did not work. So we will not be moving forward with any plans for a hybrid symposium. So it will be online with potentially plenaries recorded for others to see after the conference. What we also are hearing is that people want more plenaries or keynotes from emerging stars in this field. So ocean acidification will remain the central theme, but we want speakers that push boundaries. So we might have other speakers that are central to other sub-themes as well. The Gordon Research Conferences have been inspiring a lot of scientists recently, and so they involve a 3-hour break in the middle of the day or longer. What we expect is that we could also incorporate some aspects of that into our symposium. We also know that we need a really strong ECR focus, so events and mentoring, etc., focused on these ECRs. So what do we expect will happen at this conference? Well, firstly, in these 3-hour breaks, you may be wondering what you would be doing. We envisage this as a time where we could hold workshops, for example, shorter workshops. People could go off diving or explore the city. We'll have technical displays from people who are from instrumentation companies. So, for example, the latest in pH temperature sensors, light sensors, etc. And also it will be a great time to hold meetings between different hubs or different communities that need meetings. We expect pre-conference workshops will include things like diving out on our south coast that we'll organise. But will also be things like experimental design training that will hopefully involve Pacific Island researchers. We also expect that there'll be opportunities to take part in hands-on seaweed restoration activities, or at least learn about this and other fun stuff that's going on around Wellington in the marine environment. So with that, I'm moving on to the possible themes. So what we want to do is ocean acidification is the central theme to this conference, but we also want to potentially include 3 to 5 other sub-themes that would be of use. And so here are a range of different themes that we've come up with. And I'm going to hand over to Rachel now, who's going to go into a short poll where you can rate some of these themes and potentially get feedback on them. So Rachel, I'll hand over to you for the poll, please.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I've just set up the theme ranking exercise on Slido, and I've dropped a link in the chat. So Chris, do you want to share back your screen with just the list of the themes so that everyone can see them? So yeah, as Chris said, we're probably aiming for about 3 or 4 big overarching themes. So we're gauging interest on which of these possible themes is the most interesting to everyone. And so the Slido provides, hopefully everyone can see the link in the chat and they've been able to open the Slido. I can see that there's 3 typing, so that's great. So the Slido will provide a ranking opportunity, and you should be able to rank them from 1 to 11, but you can submit at any time. So if there's just one that you're really interested in, or there's just a few, then please feel free to submit as many as you want, or you can just rank all 11. And so I'm just going to give us a minute so that we can see some of the responses coming in, because there are quite a few to rank. But we're also interested to hear if there are any other possible kind of overarching themes that we've missed, that you would be also interested to see. So what now we've got some of the votes coming in. Chris, if you could just unshare your screen. Maybe I can just replace the current share with my Slido. So that's quite interesting responses already, because the ocean-based climate solutions and with the restoration and protection to address climate change impacts, that was actually, we had the OA Week conference focus session on Wednesday, and that was the highest ranked one at that session as well. So quite a nice agreement across the locations there. All right. So Chris, do you want to, we'll just leave everyone voting on that. And maybe Chris, do you want to talk around potential events for the 3-hour break?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, really. So potential events are really just the meetings and things like instrumentation workshops. So what we've noticed at other conferences is that, for example, sponsored instrumentation displays can be a really good opportunity for both the companies that are selling these instruments, but also a great opportunity for the scientists to come along to these. And I guess that could be another question: is what do people want in these? And so do we have a poll for that, Rachel, or people could just put into the chat box anything that they're interested in? So of course we would have other, here we go, other meetings, etc.
I've just deactivated the previous poll and started this next poll, and so I'll leave this one open so you guys can keep suggesting things during the rest of the session.
Yeah, so if you can suggest what you'd want in there. We also do have an ECR session later today. If there are any ECRs here, they're welcome to come to that as well, to view their opinions. I guess the other question that's posed here is whether or not this 3-hour break type activity is good. And other things around the format that I'm interested in knowing is whether people consider having the conference dinner on the last day is a good idea, or having it in the middle of the conference. And I've heard mixed opinions from people on both. So if you could put those in there, that'd be great. And just generally, if you've got any suggestions about what you think works and doesn't work for formats, so we can take that into account.
Cool. So I guess we'll leave that poll open and you guys can keep adding suggestions, but I think that probably wraps up our conference discussion.
Yep. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And Chris, for providing a bit of awareness on the symposium. It's already looking very interesting from the planning, and I'm sure a lot of us will be looking forward to marking our calendars to attending next year. And I wish you all the best, you and the team, the best in preparations for the symposium next year. So with that, to our audience, Rachel has put in the links to suggestions there. So if you do have any suggestions that you would like to add, feel free to email them, or please respond using the links that she's provided in the chat. So now we'd like to move on to our fourth speaker. So today I'd like to introduce Dr. Wycliffe Tupiti. Dr. Wycliffe is a marine geochemist and a member of the Solomon Islands Ocean Acidification Monitoring Program at the Solomon Islands National University. He previously worked as a policy consultant in the Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, focusing on resource management. His current work supports the development of OA monitoring capacity in the Solomon Islands. Thank you so much, Wycliffe, for joining us today for our session. You may please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Maisy, and thank you, everyone. Sorry, I'm just trying to go and look up my presentation. Oh, how do I share my screen?
So if you see the green box at the bottom of the screen.
Okay, I think I get it.
You can also, if that doesn't work for you, you can send them. Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yes. We're seeing the like PowerPoint app, and then if you just put it into presenter view, that should be good. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Working, yeah?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So today I will be sharing updates from the monitoring program in the Solomon Islands. Our monitoring program is based at the Solomon Islands National University, and we work directly with the OA Center in Suva, as well as the Ocean Foundation and partners for in this project. We've seen this map already. So Solomon Islands is one of the recipients of the GOA-ON in a box kit. So we are based at the Solomon Islands National University Marine Campus. You can see from the map, the zoomed in map, the lab is located not very far from the sea. We have an old jetty there. That's where we normally collect water samples from, and that's also where we recently deployed our ISAMI sensor. So updates from our group, our GOA-ON kit application was successful, and we got accepted in August 2022. And then following on from that, we had a hands-on training in Suva, in Fiji, in Feb of 2023. After a year later, we received our kit. And then we have a second training for some of us, thanks to Kim and Miri to come over and offer the training. And at the same time, we were able to set up our lab at the university. But we were missing some items during that time, and then they were delivered later. Yeah, and then we had another training just last month, just before the Pacific Islands Ocean Conference here in Honiara. Then during that time, we were able to also deploy our ISAMI sensor eventually. So our next steps, we are looking forward to, we've been collecting samples since the beginning of the year. So we are looking to do our lab work later this year. And then by the end of the year, we should have some data that we can submit to the UN portal. We want to later expand our OA monitoring work. So now we just want to start with OA monitoring for Solomon Islands. Later we want to expand this one where we can do OA research at the university, and to develop research questions that can, we can work to develop the OA work in the Solomon Islands, as well as to increase our collaborations. We thank our partners. We are working closely with our partners, but we are also looking to increase our network, to collaborate with people or to organizations that have interest in OA work. And also for the sustainability of this project, we are looking to seek funding opportunities where we can, so that we can extend this program, so that the monitoring program for Solomon Islands is continuous. Some of the challenges, quite clearly, logistics. We are quite far from everywhere, really. So logistics is a challenge for us, sending things. So we mentioned that we received our kit, but then we missed some items, things like that. After our first training, it took a year for our kit to arrive, things like that. So we were delayed, and then, but we are happy that we are fortunate that we have the center. The center can assist us in providing support in parts and other form of support. They are always ready to support as well. So we are fortunate and thankful to the center for that. OA in the Solomon Islands, OA monitoring work has never been done here. This monitoring work that we are currently doing is the first one that being done for the Solomons. So for OA, we have the National Ocean Policy in the Solomons. The policy covers all aspects of the ocean and ocean resources. In the ocean policy, OA is recognized as an ocean threat, and then it is recognized that there is a need to promote research and studies on the impacts and the responses needed to address ocean acidification. But we haven't been doing that this whole time. Why was that? Because we have limited OA technical expertise. We do not have the facilities, and more importantly, our government lack data, OA data. We don't have the OA data. So this monitoring program, we are hoping that this one will fill in that gap, will bridge that gap. We provide the expertise with all these trainings, with all this experience. We are looking that in the near future we will bridge that gap, and we will help the government in terms of providing OA data, because the government doesn't have data to start OA work or to make informed policy decisions on the issue of OA. So once we provide data, we can supply to the government, and the government will make more concrete policy decisions on this space. Our long-term goals, on the local level, we want to get government support, so that the government recognizes the work that we are doing with our partners, so that there is more support and more awareness on what we are doing, and then we can work and collaborate with each other on this one. And we can do this by continue to develop the OA monitoring OA monitoring program that we have at SINU, Solomon Islands National University. We want to continue to build the capacity so that the university can continue with this monitoring program at the same time can do OA research work. With that, I am thankful to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wycliffe, for that presentation. It's really encouraging to see the national OA monitoring efforts taking shape in the Solomon Islands, since 2022 till now. And we're looking forward to seeing the progress and learning more about, the progress happening in the country. So thank you so much for the presentation. With that, I would like to move on to our final speaker for today. Our final speaker is Miriam Vuyasawa. She's an ocean science professional with the Pacific Community SPC, where she supports regional collaboration and dialogue on ocean acidification and marine policy. She contributes to advancing Pacific-led research and capacity building for resilient ocean governance across island nations. Thank you so much, Miriam, for joining us today, and you may please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you so much, Maisy. Let me just share my slides. Are you able to view my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Nisang bulavinak everyone. Naitang ko Miriam Vuyasawa. I'm ilaw ni Lawaki Niray from Lomaiviti. Hello everyone. My name is Miriam Vuyasawa. I'm from the village of Lawaki in the province of Lomaiviti in Fiji. I just introduced myself in Fijian. We usually say our name in Fijian and then we say where we're from, just to establish how it's a way of gauging how you connect with somebody else from Fiji, because in Fiji we're like all somehow related. So thank you for this time. My task today is to talk on the reflections on the ocean acidification dialogue that occurred at the PIOC, the Pacific Islands Ocean Conference. This was conducted 3 weeks ago in the Solomon Islands. This was hosted by the Pacific Community, SPREP, and also the Ocean Office of the Pacific Ocean Commissioner in Honiara. Okay, sorry about that. Is it able to? Okay. So for the OA dialogue that happened at the Ocean Conference, at the Pacific Ocean Islands Ocean Conference, we had participants from the country representatives from the national government. We had scientists, we had policymakers that were also there, also students and academia that were present at the Ocean Conference. So there was a diverse group that were present at our OA dialogue. So the purpose of our OA dialogue was to provide an opportunity for Pacific Island countries and territories to share lessons they've learned and experiences they've had from when it comes to the OA work in their countries, and also to learn from one another and share our challenges that we may face, and also to learn from the international OA experts that were present during our conference. So we had 4 objectives during the OA dialogue. First was to enable participants from different agencies, ministries, organizations within participating countries to coordinate and report on their national OA monitoring activities. Second was to enable participants to share lessons learned from their OA work that they've done. And third was to provide an opportunity for participants to ask questions and to also seek advice from one another and also from the experts that were available, that were present during the conference. And lastly was to provide an opportunity for participants to learn more about the OA work. So for the structure of the OA dialogue during the conference, we had 3 different sessions. First was on science policy dialogue on OA. Second was on Pacific Island country experiences and perspectives. This was the session where countries that were doing OA monitoring in the Pacific were able to share the work that they've done so far and the experiences they have when it comes to the OA work. Third was it was a presentation session where anyone could present on their OA research that they've done so far in the Pacific. So the first session, we had 4 speakers. The goal was to connect scientific evidence with policy action on OA. So we had Kim Curry, we had Katie Soapi from the Pacific Community, Salesa, who is from SPREP, and also Christina for the first session. So the first speaker, the first presentation was on building Pacific capacity and resilience to OA. This was done by Dr. Katie Soapi, where she highlighted that when it comes to the OA work in the Pacific, there is always a need for more data to help inform policy when it comes to the OA space. And also there's a need for more OA, how do you say it? There's need for more OA to be more highlighted when it comes to the national ocean policies in our different governments. And and also she highlighted on the work of the Pacific Islands Ocean Acidification Center, where it is a partnership between the University of the South Pacific, Pacific Community, University of Otago, and also Earth Sciences New Zealand, formerly known as NIWA. So through this partnership, we're able to establish a regional hub, which is known as the Pacific Islands Ocean Acidification Center, that does training and equipment sharing and data sharing for the Pacific countries. So far in the PIOC Center, we've trained 19 scientists so far, and also the Pacific Islands Ocean Center also does monitoring work for Fiji, where we have one site in the Suva Harbor. And also through this center, through this partnership, we've been able to submit data into the SDG 14.3 data portal for Fiji. Through her presentation, Dr. Katie highlighted the importance of having regional coordination when it comes to the OA work, and also the importance of having sustained investment when it comes to OA, because OA work requires long-term monitoring. The second speaker was from Salesa from SPREP, where he focused on mainstreaming OA into national policies. His work highlighted on the work that is done so far by SPREP, where they have had the handbook, which is called the Mainstreaming Ocean Acidification into National Policies Handbook for the Pacific Islands. Also through SPREP, they've also been able to have how do I say this? They've been able to translate some of the importance work that is translate ocean acidification work into local dialect. So so far SPREP has done it in Kiribati, and also in Fijian. And also they have other tools that they have, like the Ocean Acidification Vulnerability Assessment Policy Handbook that enables more OA work to be done in the Pacific. And also he also highlighted that when it comes to the OA work, it needs to be further embedded into our ocean policies and framework, so that the ocean acidification work in the Pacific can move forward. Third was on a policymaker's handbook for addressing the impacts of ocean acidification. This presentation was done by Christina, where she highlighted on the handbook. We talked about the step-by-step framework where it shows how ocean science is translated into policy. And in this handbook that she talked about, it emphasizes region-specific strategies and practical templates. She also highlighted different case studies that were already done in the Pacific region, where I am so sorry for that noise. In the Pacific region, where Pacific Islanders can use to help them in their OA work. So there is guidebooks that is available that will help policymakers in the Pacific when it comes to OA action planning. Our fourth speaker for this session was Kim Curry, where she talked about the GOA-ON network, highlighting that the regional hub, the Pacific Islands Ocean Acidification Center, has connection to the global stage. And we're not working in silos. There's always a global movement when it comes to OA work. So our second session, this was on the Pacific Islands country experiences and perspectives on OA work. We had 4 presenters from Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, Fiji, Samoa, and Kiribati, where they gave updates on the work they've done so far when it comes to the OA work. So for Fiji, Azaria from the Pacific community talked about the achievements Fiji has so far, where they were able to submit 2 years worth of data, OA data, to the UN portal. And also they emphasized on the importance of community awareness when it comes to OA work, that when it comes to when we're deploying our sensors into our monitoring sites, the community has to be aware that there's a sensor there, that nobody has to go there and disturb it. So community engagement and awareness is important also when it comes to OA work. She also talked about when it comes to Fiji, we're also going to move towards integrating biological studies. And also there is a need to have OA more highlighted in our policies when it comes to the NDCs and our national ocean policies. When it comes to Kiribati, so far they've done community-based coral and seagrass restoration because they they just received their OA kit recently. So because they hadn't received their OA kit first, they did this project, which is community-based coral and seagrass restoration. And they highlighted that the importance of community engagement as well. So now that they've received their kits, they will now progress into setting up their labs and also progress into conducting their OA monitoring. Solomon Islands, we've heard from Dr. Wycliffe on what Solomon Islands is so far when it comes to the OA work, and he also presented this during our OA dialogue. Fourth was Samoa. This was presented by Dr. Luya, where she talked about the long-standing OA monitoring done in Samoa since 2018. They have 2 different kits in Samoa where they use the GOA-ON kits and also the kits from Kiosk. For Fiji, Kiribati, and Solomon Islands, we only have the GOA-ON kit. Samoa has 2 different kits, and they've for the Kiosk kit, they've been doing analysis since 2011. And for Vanuatu, this was done by Marion, where from the University of the South Pacific, where she talked about they've also had successfully deployed their ISAMI. They have data for 2 months, and also they have raw data when it comes to TA and pH analysis for their OA work from 2019 to 2020, where they plan to then submit this data. So Vanuatu is also in their early stages when it comes to OA work, but are committed to continuing with the ocean acidification monitoring. So for the country reflections, when it comes to the ocean acidification work in the Pacific, all the countries emphasize the need for training, equipment, and technical support, as OA work OA monitoring is quite technical, so there's always a need for more training when it comes to the Pacific, and also the equipment, because some of the parts of our equipment is not available locally, so it takes time to order new parts for it. So there's always need for training and also for technical support. And also the second thing that was highlighted during this session was Kiribati and Fiji highlighted on the importance of involving local communities when it comes to OA work in the Pacific, and also the need for data to help support policy, and also the need for having OA to be more highlighted when it comes to our ocean policies. Shared challenges included instrument maintenance, logistics, and also funding. Funding is always a need when it comes to OA work in the Pacific. Our third session was on OA research in the Pacific. So we had 5 different speakers for our this session. This is just to promote, the goal of this session was to promote regional learning and collaboration by sharing our different experiences that we have when it comes to OA monitoring in the Pacific. So our first presenter for this session was Megan from the Ocean Foundation, where she highlighted on the marine carbon dioxide removal technique. She introduced it and also talked about the commitment they have when it comes to addressing the commitment they have in on helping the Pacific understand and also support through capacity building and funding when it comes to MCDR work. And then we had Kim that talked on the practical best practices for OA monitoring. Kim talked about the challenges that we used to face in the Pacific when it comes to the limited resources we have when it comes to OA training. So she talked about the use and all the different components of the GOA-ON toolkits, and also best practices, the different methods, that SOPs that are available for us to use when it comes to OA monitoring. And through this guidebook or the SOPs from these practical best practices, the Pacific Islands Ocean Acidification Center has been using these to support and also train the other countries in the Pacific. Third presenter was Dr. Luya, who highlighted the variability of carbon chemistry at an MPA site in Savai Village. She talked about the work that they have, research work they have so far at Savai Village, where they looked at the TA and also pH on one of their MPA sites that they have. And she also talked about how it also has its implication in aquaculture and reef health. Through this talk as well, she also highlighted that the other work, the future work that they were going to do, they were going to focus now on sea grapes, which I found really interesting, because sea grapes is one of the delicacies we eat in the Pacific countries. So I found that really interesting. And our fourth presenter was Charity from Kiosk, where she talked about the amazing work that they are doing in Samoa, in Chuuk, and in also Palau. They've done a lot of monitoring in Chuuk and Palau. I think they have over 10 years worth of data when it comes to the OA space, where they are using buoys, and as well as the water analysis. And also, yeah, so she highlighted on the work that they've done so far, and said that the data belongs to Samoa, and then they could use this data to submit to the SDG 14.3 portal. Our fifth presenter was Rachel. Rachel just presented on this work as well, which was on horizon scanning. She talked about the horizon scanning that she did in they've conducted in New Zealand, and also highlighted that they were going to do this in the Pacific. So thank you, Rachel, for also highlighting on this work. And it was really interesting to see that we do align in some of the priority actions that we have in the Pacific and also New Zealand. So one of the key things that I really liked about the OA dialogue was that through all the 3 different sessions, we saw that our challenges aligned, the work that we've done. There's so much work that has been done when it comes to the OA space in the Pacific, and I really did learn a lot from everyone, and it was really good. And also through this OA dialogue, the outcomes include strengthened regional collaboration. This is the first time that we were able to learn more about what Charity Lee is conducting in Chuuk, Palau, and Samoa. So it was really good to finally learn about all the work, amazing work that they're doing in Kiosk is doing. And also there was improved understanding of technical and practical challenges where we saw that our challenges aligned. So collaboration is always needed when it comes to the OA work. And there was increased awareness for the need to integrate OA into national policies, where not only for us and everyone that was present during our OA dialogue commented on this, and the emphasis on community engagement. When it comes to the Pacific, it's always important to engage the community in our scientific work that we're doing. And also it was good to have MCDR being included into our OA dialogue. So it was really nice to learn more concerning MCDR and the exciting work that will be done in the future. And yeah, so that is what we did. So the 3 different sessions we had when it comes to OA, the OA dialogue in the Pacific Islands Ocean Conference. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. Binakaw kaliu.
Thank you so much, Miriam, for giving us an excellent overview of what happened during the Ocean Science Conference that happened in Solomon Islands. I'm sure you all had a wonderful time then. You really gave a really good overview. Just a question from my end. In case we have people from the audience listening, or anyone from the Pacific that's listening that wants to take part in ocean acidification monitoring in their communities, or probably gain access to some of the resources that were shared during the conference, because you shared a lot of handbooks and different things that maybe the people within the Pacific might want to have access to them. What are some ways that they can reach out to, probably organizations or contact points that they can reach out to best to gain access to some of this information and very important updates that we're receiving now through this session?
Thank you so much, Maisy. I think that's really good. Thank you for asking that question. It'd be good. We have our Pacific Islands Ocean Acidification Center that is available on the PICOS website, where they can reach out to, and Azaria is the one that's handling it, Azaria Pickering. So any questions, any handbooks that anyone may need, you could always reach out to us through our contacts through Azaria, and then we could provide all of that. And also, yeah, there's always the Pacific Islands Ocean Acidification Center that they can reach out to. Thank you so much.
Yes, and the mailing list as well. That's
Yes,
right.
and the mailing list as
Yes.
well. That's right. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. I guess if we don't have any more questions, Carly, do we have any more lingering questions in the QA box, or?
It looks like they were all answered, which is great, but I'm sure the conversations will continue beyond this session. I know a lot of our participants are familiar faces, so hopefully this has been a really lovely recap of a lot of work that's been done recently. And Maisy, if you want to close us out, and then you can hand it back, and I'll
Yeah, of course.
a little more OA Week info.
So yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you, speakers, for joining us today and for coming in and sharing your time. Like, I guess, apart from all the other OA sessions from the Pacific Islands that I've been listening to, I feel like this one was very informative, and like I was asking Miriam, a lot of useful information needs to be shared with the wider community. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And yeah, thank you all so much for joining us for this session. And I'll hand it over now to Carly to formally close us off.
Great. Thank you so much, Maisy. You've been such a wonderful, wonderful moderator today. And thank you again to all of our speakers. It was a really lovely mix of different types of talks and lots of wonderful information. So I really appreciate all of that. And I also wanted to thank all of our audience members for joining us today and for joining us for OA Week. Please don't forget to consult the website via this QR code to register for any other sessions that may be of interest to you. We're entering the final day of OA week, and there's one more session coming up in about an hour and a half with the early career iconic community. So tune into that if you are an early career ocean professional. And also, I'd just like to say, if you want to stay up to date with the GOA-ON community, you can consider signing up to be a GOA-ON member, although I think a lot of you already are. But you can do that at the GOA-ON website or by following the QR code on the right-hand side of the screen. Okay, and with that, I will conclude our session, and a warm thank you to all of our speakers and participants. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Carly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.